Today we're going to make cheese and tomato tart, sometimes also known as a quiche. Our ingredients we're using today are plain flour. Now the reason we need plain flour is because it has no raisin agent in it, and that's going to provide us with our starchy carbohydrates. We are going to use hard margarine or butter, and that is going to provide us with our fat. Then for the filling, we are going to use milk, and milk is going to provide us with vitamin D, calcium and protein. We have got eggs, which is going to give us our protein, and we have got cheese, which is going to give us our fat and our protein and our calcium. Now these three ingredients together are going to form the basis of our filling, because they're going to set and they're going to form the structure of our filling. Now for flavour and for colour, we're going to add in some tomatoes today, and that's going to provide us with some texture and some flavour as well, which is going to give us some vitamin C and vitamin A. We'll add in some black pepper. However, as long as the three ingredients are used, the eggs, the cheese and the milk, any other ingredients can be added, such as onions, peppers, asparagus, mushrooms. Basically, have a look in your fridge. What else is in there that you could add or use up? The first stage is to make the pastry. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sieve the flour. So the flour is sieved for two reasons. The flour is sieved to get any lumps out and to add any air in. Next, we're going to do the rubbing in method, and that's where we're going to add our hard fat, and we are going to rub in with our fingertips to make these into breadcrumbs. So it's really important that only the fingertips should be used, as these are the coldest part of our hands. So what we're doing is we are pressing the fat between our thumbs and our fingers, and what we're doing is we're creating a layer of fat around all the flour particles. We use hard fat as we really don't want this fat to melt in the flour yet, because the fat's going to create shortness to the pastry and flavour. During the rubbing in method, lift the flour out of the bowl, rubbing in the fat, and that's going to incorporate into air into the mixture, and obviously you're keeping your fat as cool as possible. Rubbing in, we use the fingertips. The aim, as I said, is to coat the particles and layers of fat, creating a waterproof layer. Now this prevents liquid being absorbed and producing gluten, which would then make our dough very stretchy, and we don't want our dough to be stretchy. We want our dough to be nice and short and crumbly. Now to check to see if it's ready, we shake our fingers on the inside of the bowl, and then we shake the bowl, and then any large lumps will come at the top. Now you've got to be careful not to over rub it, because if you over rub it, it will make it greasy and it will melt the fat. So you're going to continue this until all the fat is rubbed in and it looks like breadcrumbs. This method is often used to make biscuits, scones, and of course our shortcrust pastry. So as you can see, I'm continuing to rub in. I'm lifting up the flour and the fat, I'm rubbing it between my fingertips. I'm incorporating air in as I go. Now that we've got our breadcrumbs rubbed in, I'm going to start to add the water. Now we want not too much water, because what we don't want to do is produce too much gluten. So we want to keep it a nice short texture. So we want it to be a soft but definitely not a sticky dough. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a well in the centre, and I'm going to use a tablespoon of water, and I'm going to add that in. Now I'm going to use a round bladed knife to mix it. Now we'll have to be patient at this point, because what happens is people think that, oh, it looks dry, I'll add more water in, but actually we're just hydrating the flour here slightly to form the dough. Now I've given it a good mix, I can then go back and I can add another tablespoon of water, and I'm just going to do this gradually until my dough is formed. You can see the dough starting to come together there. So I'm probably going to need maybe 1 more tablespoon. Probably not even a tablespoon there. And as you can see, the dough is starting to come together now. But the fat, because the water was cold, the fat hasn't melted. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start to bring that dough together with just our hand. We're just going to bring it together. It'll clean down the sides of the bowl. And then that's ready to start to knead and roll. So our dough is formed, but now we're going to get it ready to roll. So I'm just going to do a sprinkling of flour onto the bench. I'm just going to shape it into a round because that's what we want to do. We want to get into that round tray. So it's easier to do this. So we're going to put it in the round and then we're going to start to ridge it. So we've got it shaped into a round. The reason we want it into a round is because we're going to try and get into this shape. Now what's really important at this point is we don't want to stretch the gluten. So I'm going to show you a technique called ridging, which helps. So all you're going to do very gently is you're just going to take your rolling pin and you're going to create some ridges in the dough. You're going to turn it. You're going to create some ridges again. So what that's actually doing is we're not rolling out at the minute, but we're actually making the dough larger without developing any gluten and stretching it. So we're just going to keep doing that for the minute. If it gets a bit sticky, a little bit of flour on the top. So this is called ridging. You're turning it. And what you'll find is it's starting to get nearly the size of the tray. So I'm going to keep going for the minute. Now, it's actually stayed a lot more round doing that technique. And as you can see there, I've only got a little bit, about, a couple of centimetres to go before it's ready to put into the tray. So what I can do now is just go to sprinkle a little bit on the top. So now I've done it, I'm going to do one more ridge to it. And again. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start to roll it. Now when you're rolling, only ever roll one way. But because we want an even thickness here, and it's important we're getting an even thickness, we'll only roll one way and then we'll turn it, roll one way, and then we're going to turn it, roll one way. And look how easy that stayed into a round. So again, we're going to measure. We're going to just slightly a little bit more. It's fine that way. Slightly a little bit more that way. I'm going to turn it. And then I'm going to do one more roll. It shouldn't be like rolling hills. It should be nice and flat with an even thickness. That's to get the high skill in there. And that should be big enough. So to get it into our tray, to get it into there, we're going to put the rolling pin underneath. We're going to lift it. And then we're going to lift it onto the rolling pin. That prevents us putting our fingers through it. Then I'm going to lay it very gently over the top. And I'm going to slide. So what you do is you lift and you slide it into the corners. You lift and slide it into the corners. And that's important because if you don't do that, what happens is it stretches and you'll end up with a hole down here and your filling will run out. So once you've done it all the way around once, you can go again. Another little technique is to take a little bit of the excess pastry off, form it into a ball, and then just use that to just press into the corner. You can do that as well. And then that just makes sure you've got a right angle. There we go. And then now we're going to take that top off. Lots of people want to use a knife at this point. If we use a knife, what that does is it stretches the pastry and that'll cause shrinkage when it goes into the oven. And we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is very gently roll back and forwards, and we're going to keep doing that. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it to take off the excess pastry. And then what we'll find is it will just come off like that. It'll just come off there. It'll come off nice and neat. And we can just tidy it up. And now it's time to put this into the fridge to relax the gluten for about 10 minutes and then fill it. Next is to prepare the filling. So we're going to use eggs, and remember we said the eggs were full of protein, and that's going to help set the filling of the quiche or the tart. First things to check. We check to see the date. We check the line mark because that shows that it has been vaccinated against salmonella, and we check there are no cracks in it. If it's all fine, we're going to hold it in the palm of our hand, one hard sharp crack, and then we're going to pull our thumbs apart and we're going to place it into the bowl. We're going to check to see there's no eggshell, and if it's fine, we're then popping it into our jug. So we're going to do exactly the same process again. We're going to look for the date, we're going to look for the line mark, we're going to make sure there's no damage, we're going to hold it in the palm of our hand, one hard sharp crack, then we're going to pull our thumbs apart and the egg will pop in. This stage is important. We only crack one egg at a time because just in case there's any issues if that egg was off or if there's egg shelling. So all seems fine, so I'm going to pop it in to the jug. Next, we're going to whisk the eggs. So we're going to denature the eggs slightly by whisking. And then we are going to add in the milk. And again, we're going to give it a further whisk. Grating. We're going to grate the cheese now. Remember, cheese is going to give us our protein. So we're going to hold our hand flat and we're going to grate our cheese flat onto the board. And this is going to give us flavour and texture to the filling of our quiche. Next is slicing the tomatoes. We're going to use our claw grip and we are going to slice across the tomato to make nice, fine, even slices, ready to decorate our cheese and tomato tart. And that is our cheese and tomato ready for the filling. Before we fill, make sure that your pastry case is already on a tray because it'll be much easier to lift it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pour in our egg and milk mixture. And then we're going to place in our grated cheese. At this point, you can add other ingredients as well. Whatever else is in your fridge, because remember what we've said, as long as you have your eggs, milk and cheese, your filling will set due to coagulation. Next is to decorate. So I'm just adding our tomatoes on there. That's going to give us flavour and texture. It's obviously going to add in nutrients also. And then I'm just going to top with a sprinkling of basil and some black pepper. Now that's going to go into a hot oven for about 30 minutes. We will know it's ready when it's golden brown and when the centre is firm to the touch. So just a reminder of the food science. When the quiche comes out of the oven, it should be golden brown and the centre should be firm to the touch. The food science behind that is all to do with dextrinisation, and that's where the starch in the flour turns to dextrin under the application of dry heat, which caused the golden brown colour. The pastry itself, the food science, is shortening, where the flour particles are surrounded in a layer of fat, and when placed in the oven, the fat melts into the flour, creating a short, crumbly texture to the pastry. And finally, for the centre, is coagulation, where the eggs, the milk, the cheese, because they all contain protein, therefore when heated, will coagulate and form the structure of the filling.